Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us live. This is the Voice of Reason podcast in the lovely year of 2021. My name is Sean Phillips. I am your host, joined alongside my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are you two on this lovely Tuesday evening?
Awesome, buddy. I'm
Outstanding.
I'm loving the gun show right now, Sean. I mean, you're one
Yeah.
you're one pack of Marlboros away from being a certified domestic violence victim or something. I don't
You
know.
know, if I had two less teeth, I would have been on the Emmy award-winning show Tiger King, and
Oh my
last year. So, it's a
God.
dream. It's a dream that I've got, and
Oh my
I'll be
God.
there. I'll be there one day. Yeah,
Oh my
this is my
God.
White Side roots. This is my. I grew up in a small town where
Oh,
meth was the biggest.
oh my gosh.
The biggest export of our lovely town, and so I take good
Oh,
pride in the crystal that we would get cooked out there in that lovely town.
oh my
So
Place is big
gosh.
enough to be
there are
considered a town.
four. There were four businesses in the village of Whiteside. There was the Baptist Church, there was the Presbyterian Church, the Holiness Church, and there was the down the street meth lab. And you know what? The best thing was that the Baptist Church and the meth lab actually got along the best. I think
Come
in
on.
order to be a good Baptist, you
Come
have to be a
on.
certain kind of crazy, and they got it from the crystal there. No, I kid.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
Folks, thank you guys so much for joining us. As we were all just discussing, it's been a good week. It's been a good weekend. I can't say that for the rest of the world in some places, but at least for us here, it was definitely an enjoyable time. Did you guys do anything fun over the weekend?
I'm too busy trying to get house stuff going. That's a
Yeah, how's
Yeah,
that
how is
going
that
for you?
going?
we're under contract. Everything's going. I just now get to find out about the lovely world of property assessment and everything else like that. So
Oof.
The fun parts,
yeah.
the fun.
Hey, good
That's such a
evening.
Well,
time-consuming process.
We have all of our listeners chiming in. We have Michael Vincent saying, "What's up, gentlemen?" He says he hopes we're doing well. We already have somebody
Awesome.
asking. One of our regular listeners, Colby Coleman, says, "Sean, are you a pro wrestler?" And so that was
Colby Coleman, yes, I am. I am a professional wrestler. Um, I am, yeah. If you want to get me booked, if you want to, have me work a birthday party, you just let me know where to head off to, and
um,
I
the
will do the job wherever I need to.
the tattoos are worth the price of admission, right there. Let me tell you.
Heck yeah,
He also
heck
does
yeah.
X-rated
Once I
shows
just
as well.
Oh gosh.
I do. Yes,
Oh.
yes. There, yeah. I'll pro wrestle with someone's uncle and a bucket of pudding. I don't care as long as the bills get paid at the end of the day.
Oh,
Morals are
no,
subjective.
no,
All
no, no.
right.
Oh my
I
Man's
got
gosh.
got to
about the
eat.
same blanket level of morals as the Catholic Church did. So,
Oh,
we're just
there it
we're
is.
Oh,
There it
no.
is. Here we go.
yeah.
Mm.
Call it like I say. I did hear a really funny joke today that made me laugh, and it was like it was a p. I'm gonna butcher like most of it, but it was great because it was like, and I no hate my heart for Catholic friends, but I love this joke. It was like, I look at the Catholic Church the same way that I look at R. Kelly, except except one of them had much better music.
Oh, no. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's terrible.
yeah.
That is so
Oh,
bad.
terrible, but it was.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Wow.
Hey,
Well,
I believe I can fly.
hey, I just think we just lost like 100 listeners right there. That's good. If we're going
That's
to,
all right. That's all
well,
right. You have to have 100 in order to lose 100. All right. So
well, tell us about your week. Tell us about your weekend, Sean.
no, it was good. It was super busy. I had some acting classes Saturday morning. Drove about an hour away from St. Louis. Had a wrestling event that was phenomenal. It was a lot of fun. Got really nice and beat up. Did some beating up. Got to enjoy the night with my family. Woke up, drove back to St. Louis for some more acting classes, and did some headshots for my web portfolio and for my acting resume, and got to meet a photographer who has shot for models and Vogue and Versace all across the planet.
Oh,
One of the
wow.
most interesting fellas I've ever met. He was so funny, but so genuine. Like, there's nothing like because he's kind of telling me how to place where to place my hands and how to do everything. But it's so funny because we're probably like 3 feet apart, and he was just like, eventually you'll get to the level where you're able to just change your face, and then he just starts like giving me all these looks. We're like 3 feet apart from one another, just staring at each other in a room by ourselves, and it was very kind of awkward, but at the same time, like so knowledgeable. He was talking about some of the places he's got to do some photo shoots for different brands and stuff like that. The dude is like, I've never felt more handsome in my life, like looking at some of the photos that we took. So it was a really cool experience.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to start out this week, boys. We titled tonight's news that Michael Vincent actually said Sean has that young Randy Orton look going on. So there you go.
Well, St. Louis finest,
Yeah, there you go.
It is what it is.
But what we're going to start with tonight, fellas, is a video that we wanted to start a little bit light before we got into the serious stuff. And Travis actually shared this with me this week. I posted it on my Facebook page. This is probably the most frightening thing that I have ever I've seen. So without further ado, let's go. I'll go to the video here, and hopefully this plays through on live, so we'll see what happens here. But yeah, watch and learn.
What does Y-E-S spell?
Y-E-S? Yeah. Y-E-S? I don't know. You say.
What does Y-E-S spell?
West, right? West?
Who fought in the Civil War?
Donald Trump. And Joe Biden.
No, the Civil War.
Donald Trump. Yeah, and Joe Biden.
Yes. If you were born 10 years ago, how old would you be?
10. Are you dumb? You'd be 5. I'll be 5.
If you're driving 60 miles an hour and you drive for 1 hour, how far do you travel?
A mile.
Yes. 60 miles an hour and you drive for 1 hour, how far do you travel?
1 mile.
You're driving 60 miles an hour and you drive for 1 hour, how far do you travel?
60.
How many countries are in the UK? 27. Can you name one country in the UK? Italy. Yes. What is the biggest number that you can think of? 400,000. 63. Do you know how many people are in New Jersey?
A lot.
How many?
1 million.
I'll give you this dollar if you can name one continent.
USA. Continent.
What's heavier, 200 pounds of bricks or 200 pounds of feathers?
200 pounds of feathers.
It's heavier than the bricks. Can you please tell me what country this is?
Okay. Oh, that's Asia, right?
It was a break.
I don't even know what to say. Can you tell me when the 4th of July is?
Oh, it's in the summer. Isn't it?
America's Independence Day, like what we celebrate. 4th of July, when is it?
In the summer.
What's the date?
The 4th. The August. I think the August.
There's no way. There's no way. Civil War.
Oh no. The French and the German?
How did you get that?
I took history.
Because that is absolutely correct. Do you know when the War of 1812 was?
No.
Can you take a guess?
A gas?
Gas station? No, a guess when the War of 1812 was.
I don't know.
You don't know your history?
Oh, this
My
one's
history
tough.
for this.
Do you know how many letters there are in the alphabet?
No.
If you had to guess, around.
I forgot.
No, you're good. You know this.
Wait. How many? That is sad. You better not post this. You can't even post it.
No, I won't post this. What is Obama's last name?
Obama. Care. Like C-A-R-E.
Obama's last name, the president.
Care. She's saying like Obama.
Yes.
So, hold on a second here. Let's get us back on screen here. screen here so we can get the full effect of us being. That was disturbing. Thanks to our friends.
To say the least.
Thanks to our friends there at the LAD site there, but that
The old
was
Lad Bible.
oh my gosh, that was probably when Travis sent that to me. I watched that like 2 or 3 times just to. It's stuff like this that makes me feel like I'm failing as a teacher miserably, because. And I wanted to show this just to prove a point tonight about how, obviously this is recent. I mean, they're all wearing their mask there and everything, right? So they're all wearing their masks. So this isn't like this was last year or 10 years ago. This is now, and I mean, if people can't do the and by the way, these are the people who are voting too. These are voting age citizens, so, especially the guy who did the 200 pounds of feathers thing. And I'm just like,
I'm about to say that guy might have been your teacher. Like he looked,
oh yeah,
he was older.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so I'm just, I just wanted to do that to prove a point though. People are really that uninformed. These are the people who are voting, and we're wondering why people are so in the dark about the news. They're believing everything that they see on Facebook. They're believing who fought in the Civil War? Really? Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I mean, how can you be that far off? And I mean, I just want to do that as a lead-in for when we talk about this thing about news that we didn't know about, and
I think it shows just how distracted we are. I mean, everybody has these things right here. You go into a restaurant, you go into a public place. I think it's kind of funny. I used to be bad with it. Now I'm much, much better about it. But you go to a restaurant, what's everybody doing? They're sitting at a table and they're doing this. It's so weird. Oh, there was actually, I remember I saw this years ago. There was this photographer took pictures of people out in public, and they photoshopped all of the phones out of the picture to show you just how awkward it looked. Really? It was one of the weirdest, kind of scary. Actually, yeah, it was scary things I'd ever seen before. But anyway, what I'm getting at is just, I think we're just so distracted that's affecting
one of the
things that we should know.
One of the things that I learned from this photographer is actually kind of funny about how people are changing is if you look at like photos from the like past up until now, people are training themselves like in photos, like even if it's not a selfie, the selfie look is becoming like a thing that everyone naturally thinks that they have to do in photos. So he's like, if you look at like photos nowadays, oftentimes, and like, sometimes people did it, but it's a vast difference of like how he's working with like new, younger models. And then even people in regular photos are all they do this head tilt where it's actually in a photo you're supposed to tilt your chin down and stare into, but people are taking photos like this right in front of them. So they're that arm up kind of thing, and how it's just like little subtle things that have just changed drastically in 5 years. Think of the amount of people now that suffer from nerd neck, like in comparison to the rest of time. Is I could go on a huge rant of things that have changed like within the last 10 years of what technology has done to us, what different things that we have in our environment, and what that's doing to us is a whole other thing. Travis and I are afraid to touch plastic right now, basically, like based off of some of the stuff we did some research on recently. Well, it's also blowing crazy. Your balls literally away.
The Rogan, that was quite interesting. So
you watched it too?
I watched parts of it. I was scared to death.
Yeah,
I was quite frightened. But what do you? So in leading into, and I'll let you guys lead in with the first story about the China and Taiwan thing. But do you think that we are our country is so blind to what's really going. I mean, it's like they throw like eye candy in front of you to keep us so distracted that we don't know what's going on everywhere else. Is everybody else better educated about what's going on in the world than we are here in America?
No, but I think it's for different reasons.
How do you mean?
I think so for perspective, let's take a look at like things that kind of happen here in America. And mind you, this isn't even a just like developed countries. So if I'm an individual, let's say that lives in a war-ridden country in like Africa or somewhere in South America or even in the Middle East, I can have a cell phone. I can have the same exact technology that someone in America has, right? However, there's a vast difference between like what the worries are of someone are in a country like that and in comparison to here in America. Like, for example, we talked a little bit about the amount of missing children in places in Africa, right? That literally entire schools get kidnapped and taken. Like, not too many children here in America, and I say not too many because it's not a complete, off the table. Not too many children here in America have to worry about being sold and kidnapped and taken into slavery, right? That's not like a real thing that they might worry about regularly that we don't think about. Now, is the sex trade thing still here? Yeah. And is it something we need to take more seriously? Yeah. However, in other countries where there's literal slavery in the forefront, that there's nothing being done about it. People are a little bit more, they might not care about what's going on in another nation. They're pretty set on what's going on right there in front of them.
And that thing right there in particular, we could do a scary show just on that alone. You talk about the sex trafficking. So I was just kind of searching around today. Actually this week we were talking about doing news that we hadn't heard, and that was actually one of the topics that it was Reuters actually. So if you go to Reuters News, they actually have a page that says news that's not been you should hear about, and it's that sex trafficking has actually risen dramatically during COVID.
Really?
Yes. And the amount of
that's interesting.
The amount 20. I think that I may be totally off on this number, but I believe the number they threw out there was like 25 million, and just that number just. I mean, that was in 2020.
People seem to forget how prevalent it can be, even here in America, and it's scary. Like, I'm gonna get the state wrong, and I don't want to say Illinois or Indiana, maybe Wisconsin. I feel like it was one of those mid-eastern kind of states, and maybe I'm wrong. But this was sometime last year where there was this house in this urban area, like in some downtown area, where like the neighborhood, all these people were like closing in on this house because it was speculated that a bunch of children had been kidnapped and taken in there in like this sex traffic ring thing. Like literally hundreds, if not thousands of people were like marching to this place about to like just shoot it up or go get these kids because apparently police weren't going to do anything about it. And there were all these people outside this house. And this was here in America. And literally you saw a bunch of cop cars pull up and they just roll in there, and then they just start pulling people out of it. They're covering all their faces because some of them are adults. There's a whole bunch of children, probably like 30 people just being taken out of this house. And then like it's all taped off. Like there's footage of it being all taped off.
That was in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee. Yes. That was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And then like a day or two later, it burned down.
Yeah. They burned I'm just looking at the pictures of it right now. Yeah.
It was wild,
surrounded by
wild situation.
By hundreds of people.
Yeah.
That police had made.
Yeah.
And they're saying that police had made previous. That's what's bad is that police had made visits, wellness checks to this place. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. That is
Yeah.
so bad.
So it's a lot bigger. And I remember, if for those listeners that are kind of across the, whether you're Missouri or Illinois or anywhere in the world, a town that's near and dear to us that's actually risen in the amount of trafficking with drugs specifically is Hannibal, Missouri.
Yes.
Has gotten horrible within the last decade, and even more so in the last recent years. And the reason why is just because where it sits geographically is a perfect route, these kind of smaller side highways to get to these bigger metropolitan areas. So the amount of trafficking that probably goes through regions like that in these smaller towns that you might not think of, because I mean, it's one of those things you don't really think of if you saw, a man at a gas station with like a young girl. You might typically think like just father daughter kind of thing, and then they're on their way. And so that's like, I used to joke about it because I never understood what the safe place thing meant at like quick trips.
Right.
I never, because it was around the
hospitals.
same time that that colleges were kind of doing the whole, like, we have a safe space for you here if you experience like microaggressions on campus and your brain just, so I was always like, is that what that really is? But no, it's literally where like quick trips are. And I think it's almost one of those double-edged swords where it's like, it's good to know, if you are a victim, you can immediately try to seek help while you're there. But then it's also like, hey, look at us, if you're someone trafficking children, don't stop here because those kids could clearly try to get away with it.
And one of our listeners, one of my buddies who actually lives in Louisville, said sex trafficking is huge Kentucky Derby weekend here in Louisville. So, and we hear that about the Super Bowl. We hear that about the Super Bowl too, as well.
Yeah.
So that, but
yeah, I mean, you just got to think of those. I hate sounding like one of those folks, but just think of all the big money of dirtbags that have big money that don't get in trouble. They attend those kinds of things, and that's the Epstein lifestyle, man. That's a real thing that happens.
So that's one topic, and we didn't even plan on addressing it, but that's some news. I mean, that's some news that has, that doesn't get, we don't cover. I mean, but here in the United States, you would not think that that's something that happens, but that's a perfect example of news that we need to be. I mean, granted, COVID is a major situation, but this sex trafficking is going on without anybody giving a rat's hairy butt about it, and that really bothers me. That why aren't we exploiting these people more? Why aren't we going after these people and just showing them? I mean, those folks in Milwaukee knew what to do, apparently. So,
right.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to take it in your own hands. It's
That's sad. Well, why don't you go ahead and lead in with that the China story? Whichever one of you guys want to go with that.
Yeah. So I think what scares me about this, now that I think about it, was I actually found this by accident. This wasn't even something I saw on an American news network. So I originally saw this thing on YouTube. It was Sky News Australia, and they were kind of talking about, it started out, the video I first saw was, they were talking about Biden as a leader and how their country didn't really have faith in him handling some of the issues that were going on in the world. And they kind of showed some of his mess ups and all that other stuff, which that's a whole different story. But anyway, I started getting all these, notifications of all their videos and stuff, because I thought they had a really interesting take on American politics. And one of the things that I have just been seeing nonstop, and they're not just posting this once a day. This is, you can go on YouTube right now, and Sky News Australia, like almost on the hour, is posting stuff about China. And to our listeners who've been listening before, if you haven't listened yet, we talked about a meeting that we had with China in Anchorage a couple months back. It wasn't good. Both sides weren't very willing to work with each other. It was kind of heated. You can even find some footage of it, and it was very I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it was tense. Yes, very tense. So what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing on this Sky News Australia is They are talking as if war is imminent. It's not if, it is when. Is the way they are talking about this. And I'm going to say something that we have always heard. History always repeats itself.
Yes.
Look back to World War II. Japan started building their empire, building their military, and then they took one island. Then they took another island. Then they attacked another island. Then they attacked China. America wanted to stay out of it. We wanted no part of war because we were tired of war. Sound familiar? We're tired of war right now. We were in Iraq. We were in Afghanistan. We were tired of it. We waited and we waited. And guess what happened? December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. We look in Europe right now. Russia is building their military and they're preparing to take Ukraine. This is a different subject, but it's kind of the world issues and we're comparing the two. They're taking Ukraine, which they claim was originally part of the Russian land, which China is doing the same thing with Taiwan. It was originally at one point part of China, and they want to bring it back to the motherland. Adolf Hitler, prior to World War II, he wanted to take the older lands that used to be part of the German Empire way back in the day, and he wanted to bring it back to Germany. He took Austria, he took these other countries, and eventually, after taking all these countries, he attacked Poland, and we know what happened next. We stood by, and things got worse, and war broke out. And this is, they are posting on the hour. Like they had a top, I was listening to one today, and one of the top Australian generals addressed the soldiers and was saying that we need to be prepared for this. This is a real possibility. Taiwan's military is 5 times larger than Australia's. I didn't know this. And Australia's people are starting to say, like, do we need to get ready for war? Do we need to start building our military? Some people are even, I was reading through the comment sections on this stuff, and that's always fun. But a lot of people are like, give us our guns back. Like, we need to get prepared for this. Like, and I was doing I was looking through some forums and other stuff when I had free time, and they're legitimately worried. So why hasn't, well, before I even get to that, another reason this is kind of an issue. Taiwan, we're a country that promotes democracy, and this is a democracy. And our stance has always been we support other countries that, for the Western civilization ideologies and stuff. But anyway, Taiwan is strategically located in a place to where China would be able to deploy to Japan, to Australia, to New Zealand, and the United States. It's a very strategic location. And what's also really disturbing about this, and this caught my guard. So I'm sure you guys have heard, and if you not, have you guys heard about the chip shortage going on in the United States and globally? Any of you?
No.
So currently there is a massive shortage of conveyor microchips. They go in your cars. They go in your laptops. There's chips in everything. Taiwan is the capital of chip manufacturing in the world. There is a global shortage of this right now. Our car manufacturers, GM's closing plants right now. Tesla is closing down production, I think, on the Model 3 because they don't have the chips for it. There was a couple other companies that had to close down plants because they don't have the chips. And this was a couple weeks I read this, and they actually met with Biden, the CEOs of these companies, to address this issue. And pretty much the only response from the U.S. government is, well, we'll just make our own.
We don't have the technology for it.
Bingo. But anyway, to get back to the issue at hand. So China it's not a matter if, they are going to attack Taiwan. Their leader has publicly stated he is going to bring Taiwan back to the Chinese mainland. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Mm-hmm. What concerns me is what our response will be and what it will take for us to get involved. And I know some people are probably saying right now, we need to stay out of this. We have no business being there. This isn't our fight. Let China do their thing. We're tired of war. We said the exact same thing years ago before World War II. And what's concerning is, say China does take Taiwan. Do you gentlemen think that China is going to stop growing after Taiwan?
I have mixed feelings about this because in my so the history of Taiwan is actually quite interesting
Yes,
in
it
the
is.
fact that you can go back to I mean, it was a Dutch colony at one time, it was a British colony at one time, and then the Chinese took it, then the Japanese took it, and then the Chinese took it back, and then World War II happened, and Japan, and at the time Taiwan was called Formosa, and the leader, and at the time it was, and they actually Taiwan is officially known as, is actually known as the Republic of China. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. They call it the ROC. Yep. And so the Republic of China, which was led by Chiang Kai-shek, which those guys overthrew the last Chinese dynasty way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then Chiang Kai-shek took over, and then you had the Republic of China then moved its capital from Beijing to Taiwan, and you had about 1.2 million Chinese who moved over to Taiwan, and that's where and so a lot of Chinese went there, followed Chiang Kai-shek. So then, following the war in 1950, what was it, 1953, when the Chinese Revolution occurred, and you had Mao Zedong who took over and established a communist government, and so they had all of these, joint declarations and everything. And so we kind of stepped in. What was it? 1954. The Republic of China or Taiwan U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty is signed in Washington. Okay, and then 1958, the Chinese and Taiwan trade gunfire, artillery fire for 40 days. And so then you don't hear anything more about it. And then China, and then fast forward then to 2000. I'm trying to find it here. 2000 I think it's 2015 2015. So the president of Taiwan and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met in Singapore, marking the first time that the two sides had met in 66 years. And
wow,
that was when, so Taiwan then joined the World Trade Organization then. Okay. And you'd think, okay, everything's, well and good. But, now China's, this has been a thorn in China's side for a long time. And yeah, here they are. They're a democracy. And we're so, like we said, we're so tied up in COVID. We're so tied up in everything else that we're not, it's not being discussed. It's not being, you see Joe being quiet, it's.
Man, this stuff like this literally like fuels the fire for like the big conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and guys like that that are like, China put they created COVID, they brought it to America, they had it run rampant through Western civilization, all the while because of how secret and protective they are, they kept their borders closed and they were actually fine on the inside. After their first outbreak, they were fine. They let the rest of the Western civilization crumble, and then all of a sudden they come ready for war. Like I could picture Alex Jones just yelling and sweating to himself, just saying stuff like that. No, like you brought up a very good point, and I want to kind of address something. In 2016, I took part in a mission called Anaconda 16, which was a joint forces operation training exercise that occurred in Poland. This training exercise was spurned on pretty last minute. If I recall correctly, and I'm sure my leadership probably knew a little bit more ahead of time, but we were given about 2 to 3, if that, heads up on we're going to Poland. months, which for an AT for a month stint of training is quick. That is real quick to be loading stuff up and shipping overseas, especially in a guard unit, where you're drilling once a month. It's fast. And so we did joint training operations with NATO forces over there. This was months after Russia invaded the Ukraine the first time. Okay. This was no planned exercise. This was, you step on our turf, on our friend's turf, we show up to the field. That's exactly what it was. That happened in 2016. I'm interested to see if similar things are going to start to happen again. Because here's the thing, that training in Poland, that Anaconda 16 took place over like 9 to 10 months up until Russia kind of backed off. It was a long training exercise. Like, we were the first boots on ground to get infrastructure down, and then more and more. Like, you got to think, this was a training operation, that introduced a bunch of guard units, but was also backed and supported by fully armed military active duty forces. Okay, this was not just a training operation. It was for sure a show of force. And so to be a part of something like that, and then to now see situations that are happening again, Russia wanting to dig their toes back in the lovely Ukraine's soil, and the same with China, trying to, and again, we talked about it recently too. Look at the things that are occurring in the South China Sea, and look at how on edge Britain and Japan were with China. This is not, and Travis, you brought up a good point. I think you were the ones that said it, is, and I hate bringing this up, but look at some of the trends that we're kind of seeing, right? As far as like cryptocurrency and how they're kind of booming, stuff like that. People need to be careful with certain things, with certain assets and certain things that they place value in when it's, and I hate saying it like this because I believe that there is a future for cryptos. Hypothetically, if you put your money into a digital space, which that's technically what all money kind of is right now, but you put it into a digital space, and all of a sudden we go to war, serious war with our largest trade partner in the world, things might get a little bit froggy on what happens to the value of the dollar, on what happens to the value of electronic assets, right? The things that will become more valuable will literally, like what it feels like when we roll back in time, will be the things that you can hold in your hand. That is what will have value. And so it's interesting. We talk about the things that we get distracted by, the big things that are in the news, whether it's celebrity boxing matches or whether it was she said, he said kind of nonsense. But yet here we are, literally on the brink of war. When you have Australian citizens asking for their guns back, you know that things might be a little bit tense.
Right.
No, and there's actually, I know the U.S. had a trade war with China. I don't know how it is now with Biden as a president, but I know that Australia and China are having a really big trade war going right now. China, I believe what I read, is responsible for 97% of Australia's wine exports. And now they're not, because of this trade war going on, Australia is losing a ton of money. So there is definitely some heated stuff going on with this. And yet we're so busy watching Jake Paul knock out Ben Askren and all of this stuff. And yet this is going on. And something else I'd like to add too. If you look at how wars start, and Andy, by all means, jump in on this. Usually what happens, this is something it's building. It builds up, it builds up, it builds up. And then it's either an accidental skirmish, or it can be accidental or something small. It just ignites the flame and then boom,
Well, we've seen
Yeah,
that.
but-
Hey,
War.
does anyone remember the Archduke Franz Ferdinand?
Francis
Exactly.
Ferdinand. I was just getting ready to say that,
Yep.
Sean. I mean,
Yeah. I
all
mean,
it takes is, Europe in the early 1900s they called it all the focus is what they called the Balkan powder keg, was what was going on down the Balkan Peninsula, between Serbia and Greece and the Ottomans and and all it takes is one spark. I mean, we don't, and that's that's the thing. I read a book for one of my research classes I did in college. I did a course just on World War One, and World War One is my absolute. It's fascinating to me because, like what you said, Travis, it was just talking about how it just takes one thing, and all of these things fell into line. Okay. And you're saying history repeats itself. This whole thing is a perfect example because it's not like we could have learned our lesson from World War II or even Korea and then Vietnam. We tried to fight Vietnam like we fought World War II. You had these generals who were around in World War II who were leading parts of the show in World War II. Well, you didn't fight Vietnam like you fought World War II. Well, now. We're looking at a totally, we haven't really had a major exchange since, I mean, Vietnam was between us and the North Vietnamese, but when you look at, I mean, bring in all of these players. What have you got? You've got China, you've got Australia, you've got Japan, you've got, I mean, you might as well throw North Korea into the mix. You might as well
New
throw
Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah, you have to.
And that's a scary thing. And
India.
And then
Yeah, that's another one.
India and Pakistan. People do not know. First of all, India and Pakistan hate each other. Absolute hate
Big time.
each other. They both want to send each other, and they both have nuclear weapons, and they both want to send each other back to the Stone Age. And you want to talk about something that's never being talked about? That is a tinderbox that has been brewing since the days of the Cuban Missile Crisis back in 1963. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, literally, I was so sorry to interrupt you,
No, go ahead.
but I was literally going through. It's kind of funny because we talk about how it is that history repeats itself. People, what I've seen, at least in when I talk to individuals my age and younger, or a couple years older, the Cold War never really ended in the sense that it was always like there's that level of distrust is always going to be there.
still there.
And
It's still there.
and it goes back like it's kind of funny because me, I'm a UFO nerd, and you look at things like the Roswell incident, right?
Mhm.
That alleged weather balloon was not a weather balloon. It was literally the Air Force was working on a device in order, because they didn't trust Russia. They didn't trust Russia all the way back then in the 1940s. Okay. And it was a device that was used that would go into Russian atmosphere, and it would listen for atomic bomb testings. That's what it would listen for. And it turned out that they were testing nuclear devices. So this stems back. This isn't new. And so when people are so shocked as to how our relations are still rocky, look at everywhere in the world. Look at like nations like India, superpower nations, just based off the sheer population that they have, right? That are next door neighbors to China, and they are at each other's throats. Okay, it is
And
wild.
the population.
How
So you think about that too. So China has 1.4 billion people. India has 1.2 billion people. There are 8 billion people in the world today, and 1/4 of the world's population resides in those two countries.
it's
And
it's
another-
and
Go ahead.
no, well, I was just gonna say, and India also has like 2.8 billion cows, so you could literally have like 2 cows per Indian citizen riding on them, these mounted cows into China. It would actually be quite something.
Be like that scene from Lord of the Rings, when they about to charge through the
charging into Mordor. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
But
Right.
what I was
I
so
love it.
actually I don't something else I don't think got a lot of coverage. I think this was back in December. India and Chinese forces actually clashed. It was on
Yes,
the
they
border.
did.
I forget where, and there were soldiers literally got killed
mhm.
on both. I
Yes,
think both
it
sides.
was what
Yes,
was it was
there's
I
footage of it too.
as
You can
far
look
as
it up
like
on YouTube.
Yeah.
yes, yeah, you can literally listen to it. It almost kind of reminds me whenever God, like, you know how on edge you always hear about how like North Korea gets whenever South Korea and America does their routine war games exercises, right?
Yep.
And they always get on edge. Some of the footage of like kind of seeing like North Korea shoot shit off into like the sky just to kind of like say like we see what you're doing over there.
Yep.
I kind of feel like that's kind of what was going on. Like maybe people fail to understand. We just talked about how it's like little tiny things that set people off. We were just talking about how quick and sudden it might be that a cop might shoot someone out in the middle of the street. Could you imagine that same energy in India or China?
Oh, yeah.
That level of nervousness, not knowing, and then a war starts, right? So there's a lot.
Well, I think there's a lot
larger consequences.
What's good about this is that there are a lot that tells me even though that China, communist, and India is a republic, but there are a lot of cooler heads that are prevailing right now because if it had been up to us, oh heck, who knows when this would have blown over, And
one had imagine had Donald Trump been reelected, how things would be handled right now.
Yeah, I can't.
Well, that's what I'm speculating about. It's like, okay, so say if China does, if in fact attack Taiwan, in my opinion, I don't know with this current administration if the U.S. is going to intervene. I just don't.
I don't know.
I think,
and
the
I
most
honestly
we will
don't know
even
if
see
Trump
is sanctions. I think that's the most we'll see. I think
had Trump been reelected, it wouldn't even be. I don't even think China would have waited another 4 years.
I agree.
Well, and
I agree.
and
Whether
we're
he
all-
was a good
and-
leader or not.
And yeah, we're all saying this. All three of us, we're not Trump supporters by any shape of the imagination. But I mean, the guy, he was such a wild card that he kept everything.
It's like the dude at the gym that does steroids and screams a whole bunch. Like, no one likes it, but they're really not going to say too much about it just because you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Well, I heard some quote, and this was actually the Australia Sky News, and they were saying, China and other countries, they were saying China, they took Trump seriously, but they did not take him literally.
Oh, I like that. That's a good.
Yeah, I really like that. And but it gets, I agree. If he was our president, for better or worse, because of his stance and the wild card that he was, I think China would be absolutely waiting.
Well, and while we're talking, I want to, before we run out of time, I do want to touch on this real quick. Another thing that we're not hearing about in China, and this was first brought up last year, that a group of, and I want to get the name of these people. This is in China's Xinjiang region, which is an eastern region, which is when you get over in eastern China, it's a really interesting, or I'm sorry, it's over in western China, my bad. Western China is a very big melting pot region because you're getting over in there, when you get over on the backside of China, over by the Himalayan region, which is where this is at, it's actually
very secluded.
It's actually close to where my daughter is from. When you get in that part of the world over there, you want to talk about being away from everything. But in this region, so there is a group of Muslim Uyghur community in Xinjiang. This is a Muslim community. Now, China's stance on religion has been relaxed in the, how do I want to say that? It's been relaxed in the, like your bigger cities and everything. I mean, when we were in Beijing and when we were in Shenzhen, which is their major port city, people were talking religion. There were churches that were public you could go to, but Islam has always been something they've clamped down on. And so what they have, and reports had gotten out, and I'll just read, this is actually, this, again, from Reuters. What was it that they had said that the Chinese, that they had their first report, they actually had their first report back in December from people who had been in these camps. So, what did you call them? Re-education camps, didn't you, Travis? Isn't that what?
That's what they
Yeah.
China was labeling them as.
So these re-education camps, and people who were coming out of these camps, these Uyghurs who were coming out of here, were coming out and saying, I mean, they were being, I mean, everything from being castrated to raped to,
sterilized,
and some are even being killed. And so again, United States is not doing anything. Well, on Friday, April the 23rd, the British Parliament declares genocide in this region, and of course, Beijing comes out and denies that anything has happened. But yet you've had, and again, here you go again, Travis. History repeating itself.
Yeah, sound familiar?
Okay, this we had before, and people don't know too much about this. There was an American Nazi Party before we declared war before we got into war with Germany. There was I have a video. I need to go find this video again. It's so old that it's a VHS tape that was handed down to me by the guy my predecessor, Randy Snell. And it actually had video from these big conventions that they had of the American Nazi Party. It was like 1936, 37. And
are you sure it wasn't from a Trump 2020?
Right, yeah, right. Sure, yeah, right.
Campaign rally.
There you go. We just lost 4 viewers right there. Thanks. So, but we had an American Nazi Party, but you had these stories, and we didn't want to believe them, that Jews had started to be rounded up, and you had Jews. I mean, how we got Albert Einstein, okay? How we got, some of these other guys who were some of the brightest Jewish minds, and they were telling stories, and of course the whole time what's America saying? Oh no, that can't be happening. No, it's not as, let Hitler do his thing. He's
Yeah, Time Magazine Man of the Year.
1938 Time Magazine Man of the Year, and because he had gotten Germany out of their depression. He had rebuilt Germany. He had built the Autobahn. He had got their economy rolling. But they didn't fail to mention is that he was violating the Vienna Treaty that ended World War I, and he was building up the military. He was taking, like you said earlier, Travis, taking over territories. But again, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Okay, so we're not going to, and so. And again, I think it's this whole thing that if America takes a stand on it, we're going to get we don't do nothing about them Muslims and blah, 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 But this is a serious problem. And, as a father of two, and I hate to play this card all the time, but I'm going to play this card. As a father of 2 Chinese children, so being there firsthand, I spent 4 weeks of my life in that country, and they put on the good face. I want to tell you something. If they see an American walk in the door, they are doing everything to kiss your butt. My entire acreage, they're kissing my butt because they want to make it look great. That here's this American. Let's show them how clean and how great and then everybody from our taxi drivers to our interpreters to our guides talk about how great China is and how, but yet you go to these orphanages. My daughter's orphanage. We went there in November of holy cow. We went there in November of 11. Yes, November of 2011. And it was so outside and my daughter lives she basically Shanqing, it was in the foothills of the Himalayas, okay? And the outside temperature was around 30 degrees. It was 56 inside the orphanage. The government had not given them the go-ahead, the okay, to turn on their heat inside the orphanage because they hadn't released the coal yet to these government-funded orphanages. And so you see all these kids walking around, sleeping in coats, babies in their cribs, sleeping in coats, and just snot running down their face, and it's freezing cold. I mean, I couldn't sleep in a 56-degree house, and we're not seeing. We want to turn our heads and look away. Well, China's got all these people. We can't do nothing against them. And we have to address this. I mean, like you said, Travis, I think you put it best when you said it earlier. We went through the same exact thing, World War II. We turned our World War One. That's not our fight. That's over there. World War One, World War Two. That's a Europe problem. That's a Europe thing. We've got, World War II. We said we've got our problems here at home. We've got the Great Depression. Okay, same thing now. Well, we've got COVID here at home. We've got a recession here at home. We got to get out of this COVID thing. We've got to do, and thank good old Teddy Roosevelt for making us the world police force. But now we're in this position, and we have to be the voice. I mean, like you said, Sky News. I was watching that clip that you sent me. Sky News they're terrified of the fact that Joe Biden is the leader of the free world, and I mean, you look at these other countries, they don't think that we have it in us anymore to be able to cover what's going on.
No, I thought it was just really, really interesting just hearing another country's reporting of us and the world in general and comparing it to what we're being told and the narratives that we're hearing. And it's eye-opening. Again, I found all of this out by accident. Yeah. I wasn't searching for this. So
here I am. I mean, I knew a little bit but the Taiwan situation's been brewing for 2 or 3 years. I knew a little bit about it. I didn't know anything about this Muslim thing. I didn't know anything about these re-education camps.
I didn't either. I
knew nothing about this. And when I started reading this, and you and I started talking earlier before broadcast, and I mean, it's eerily familiar. And Americans, we're more, like you said, we're more concerned about the Jake Paul fight. We're more concerned about, I want to take my mask off and I want to go do this and I want to go do that. And
I want my fourth stimulus check.
And I want my, where's my stimmy check at?
Yeah. Get my payment.
Yeah. So
have they said that they're dropping a fourth one out?
It's been, I think it's been pushed around a few times, but I don't know how serious they are about it. I hope not.
But for our listeners, what I would like to see, what are your all's thoughts on this and the U.S.'s role in this? Do you think we should get involved? If so, how much do we get involved? I'm really curious to see what everybody's perspective is on this, and not just the three of us. So this is really, really interesting to me. So yeah, please let us know.
Yeah, and
when I'm like in my head, I'm trying to brainstorm. Like when I'm thinking about a lot of this, when we talk about the Muslim re-education camps, and let's say we do pull out of Iraq, Afghanistan, like the talk of the houses, and you would think of, after being at war with nations like that for so long, you would think like maybe China would try to reach out to those adversaries and be like, hey, come join this fighting side. But then all of a sudden, like, they might turn their head and be like, don't you have like almost 2 million of our of people who practice our religion enslaved in the Himalaya mountains right now? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what's kind of going on? It's, man, it literally, it makes me think of like a game of Risk, because I'm just trying to.
That's eerie, because I thought the same thing.
Literally, plot point what nations would work together, what nations would get roped into it. I mean, it is just, and unfortunately, when it comes to big nations like this, like the regions in the Middle East are different. Okay, wars will not just be fought by M4s and IEDs and grenades and RPGs. These wars will be fought through nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. These wars would be fought through cyber tactics. This would be one of the biggest cyber wars we've ever seen, with the amount of hacking. And it's interesting, really, really interesting. You look at, you go all the way back to post-Revolutionary War, when France called for our aid whenever they went to war with Britain, and the rocky relationship we had after unanswered calls. And I would hate to see something similar like that happen if our allies did give us a ring if something happened. Yeah, scary times.
Yeah, I really am. This is why, so I'm sure our normal listening audience is looking at us and saying, well, what the heck are you talking about this for? Because this is, again, one of those things that, one of our goals is to make you, our listeners, more aware, more, I hopefully can say educated about what's going on in the world, and you can make informed, educated, decisions and say, hey, maybe we should take this into consideration. Next time you see your congressman or your local representative, say, hey, where are we at? Where do we stand on this? I mean, this is something that we really need to be paying attention to because, as Travis said earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And I just want to be clear. I'm really not advocating for the U.S. to take military action. This is something I would like to see more political action with this. And I would like to see this get solved through politics and not war. Because like you said, a war like this is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before just because of technology and everything. But I would just like to see more action from, our leadership towards this. But crickets.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we may have solved one of the problems of the world tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, and one of our listeners said, really hard to say if we should or not, because I feel if we don't step in, we will be drug into it one way or another.
True. Very true.
Very true. Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, that was just a topic, and thank you for chiming in on that. And again, thanks for
thank you.
listeners chiming in on all those things tonight. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, great conversation. And I'm sure we will look to the coming weeks and find out more. And again, just take a little bit of time out of each day. If you take long poops, just find yourself on over to Sky News apparently, and just do a little bit of reading. And
it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, all it is, it's a bad rabbit hole.
I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners before we wrap things up this evening?
I will give a little bit of a teaser. You definitely want to call all your friends and neighbors. Next week's show, we've had a little bit of discussion, but we don't want to give it away, is going to be a fireball discussion. You definitely want to be a part of what we're going to be talking about next week. I'm probably going to say it's probably going to be one of our, we'll drop some more teasers as the week comes on, but we really want to push the show. We may try to get a few guests on, or a couple of guests, or one guest, but this next week's topic is going to be very, very interesting.
I like it.
Oh, and hey, go to Apple Podcasts. Go to Apple Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, yes, we are. We are on Apple Podcasts, finally.
Yeah.
Finally. So for those that don't have Spotify or don't have Podbean, we are on Apple Podcasts.
And you live in a cave. So.
Until China takes over Apple and deletes us right off there for slandering their lovely communist dictatorship.
We just got to get re-educated. That's all.
Hey, they got camps for that too. So
yeah, it's great. So
to be continued.
I went to one. It was called Basic Training. Well, gentlemen, it was great to talk to you guys as always. To our listeners, thank you so much. If you could please give this video a share, please share our page, like our page on YouTube. Please subscribe, click the bell for notifications for when new episodes are uploaded. Make sure you follow us on Spotify, Podbean, now Apple Podcasts, wherever you do like to listen to your podcast. And please, even if you are just friends of us and you're catching the tail ends of it, and just give it a share. Just give it a share, because you never know who might listen to it, and you never know who might like to come back and listen again. So from the bottom of our hearts, again, I can't say thank you enough to our listeners, our commenters, for staying involved. Andy, Travis, thank you guys so much for your research that you guys did this week. It was a great conversation, and I cannot wait to chat with you guys next week. This has been the Voice of Reason podcast right here And may the 4th be with you guys. I can't believe I left that out from the get-go. May the 4th be with you, and I will see you boys next week, hopefully at our regular scheduled time.
Yep.
We'll see you, folks.